Hello, this is Steve Fretzin. I'm here sitting with Mike Delrahim, interviewing about business development tips, tactics, secret strategies regarding business development. I have a number of questions for him, and the first one is really just describing for me your legal background leading up to your current role at the firm.
I graduated Chicago College of Law in 2001, and I started working with a solo practitioner for about 18 months. He was more or less my mentor in the very beginning. Taught me how to do a real estate transaction, how to appear in court, how to file documents with the court, how to make my own files, how to find the water department and interact with the people within the water department, so forth. So I became somewhat of a jack of all trades, as some solo practitioners actually are. And I found that to be helpful in my career because it showed me how to interpret real estate contracts differently as a person who drafted pleadings to go to court. It showed me how to make oral arguments differently from a pragmatic perspective as a transactional lawyer as opposed to from a litigation perspective. And it gave me an opportunity to work on less sophisticated matters and really learn how to do them well. So I started by doing residential real estate closings and small commercial closings and working on small litigation matters. A lot of the work was flat fee, and because it was flat fee and I was new, it enabled me to put in a lot of time and effort into any particular matter. And despite that, the client would receive a flat fee bill. And so what I found myself doing was impressing clients by doing work really thoroughly and well. And at the same time, they were getting a small bill. And in some cases, I was I'll call it outshining the other lawyer, putting in more time and effort in a file because the economics of operating a law firm didn't really affect me. And so I could spend as much time on a file to do the work that had to be done to do it right, notwithstanding what the fee would be, because the fee wasn't of concern to me. Mm-hmm. After some time, I ended up moving to a slightly larger firm, which is the firm that I'm at right now, and that was in about 2004. I took the same philosophy with me here, doing residential real estate transactions and some litigation work. And what I found was it is a two-part approach. First, you got to make a great first impression. And as a lawyer, your first impression is the first matter that you handle for somebody. If you do great work but the fee's too high, you're unlikely to get more work out of the person. If you do lousy work at a low rate, you're unlikely to get more work out of a person. If you do great work at a very reasonable fee, you're likely to get more work out of the person if you ask the right questions. Mm-hmm. But you have to cross-market and sell yourself in order to do that.
Right.
And so I think that asking questions of a person or asking for work from a person is the hard sell without having your foot in the door. So in my opinion, you need to have a foot in the door before you start asking for work. Okay. Otherwise, you're just a door-knocking salesperson,
right?
And people get turned off by it.
Yeah, it's as I mentioned quite a bit in my book, Sales Free Selling. It isn't about being salesy or selling to somebody. It's really about getting that foot in the door and then walking someone through a buying decision and being helpful and asking questions and being consultative. So I think you're right in line with that.
Right. It's my experience that if you can converse with an individual in a way that makes it the individual's idea to send you work and not you strong-arming, pulling in, giving the hard sell to try to compel the person to give you work, you're more likely to get work than not.
Right.
And so I'm more of a soft sell. I try to get my foot in the door, I try to create a reason for the person to want to give me work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in my opinion, that opens up the doors for, different kinds of work. But you don't try to take down an entire company's legal work all in one conversation.
Right.
You get one small piece, you do a great job, you do it at a great rate that makes the client think that you can do other work and do a great job at a great rate. And then before you know it, by asking simple questions like, what does your company do about employment issues? What does your company do about corporate issues? What does your company do about real estate issues? Who do they give work to? If the response from the client is, our go-to lawyer with respect to real estate transactions is this one person because he's phenomenal. You have to decide as, a professional trying to bring in more business if you're going to push back on the client and insist on more work or not. And that's the difference between the hard sell and the soft sell.
Right.
And
or it might be about maybe asking more questions. When you say that your go-to guy is phenomenal, give me some examples of the things he does. Or maybe one way I've done is on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being he's perfect in every way, reasonable fees, good follow-up, et cetera, professionalism. Where is he on a 1 to 10? Oh, he's easily an 8. Well, there's still a gap there, so we can look at maybe just trying to uncover something that gives us, a little bit of a leg up versus, again, going aggressively at it when that may not be the right approach. Right.
And while you may not be the expert in the field, if the perception is that you are the expert in the room, that oftentimes is good enough to put you in a position where somebody will be asking for your opinion or asking for your services.
Okay.
So the way that you do them, the way that I encourage people in my firm to do it is speak on panels, teach a class, host networking events, write an article, and do these things more than just once. Do them repetitively. Do them every single month, every single week, every single day if you can.
Okay. So speaking, getting out there, being active, being a panel, being seen as an expert, because it's not, as you're saying, it's not that you're necessarily an expert, although it's, everyone has a certain level of expertise. It's really the perception or the belief of the people around you that drives them to work with you, and then you have to prove yourself that you are once they believe that you are.
Right.
And it's moving it forward from there.
Right.
So, I think those are some pretty, terrific ideas and suggestions for, people listening to this that want to go out and develop business, to give them some things to do that could make them sort of different in the community. If you were to give advice, if you're talking to 100 lawyers in a room that were young lawyers just getting into this now, what would your advice be, or what would you tell them?
I tell a lot of attorneys or law students that at the school in which I teach, and current lawyers, prospective lawyers, essentially the same thing. That is, in the beginning of your career, you should think of yourself much like a medical student resident, somebody who spends years in a hospital making little or no money for the sole purpose of learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes the drive to succeed financially gets in the way of succeeding financially. It's because it creates an overzealous nature. And the overzealous nature of an individual is oftentimes perceived as being a hard sell rather than a soft sell. So in my opinion, if you're overzealous and because you're overzealous, you're giving a hard sell to somebody, your behavior is being counterproductive. It's the individuals that can accept the fact that at the beginning of their career they may not make very much money, but it's a long-term play. And so you as a first-time lawyer, first year out of law school, you need to learn how to practice law before you can start selling legal services. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate thing about law school is you have 3, sometimes 4 years to learn how to figure out what the law is. And then once you learn the skill set of figuring out what the law is and how to apply the law, then you can go out into the world and start selling services. But from a practical matter, you don't have the skill set on day one out of law school after being sworn in to the bar to adequately represent a client in a way that will enable you to develop more business. So you just have to be patient.
Okay. What about and this will be my last question, but when you think about someone who maybe has built a reasonable size book of business, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, a lot of them, a lot of the people that I deal with and I work with, struggle with that. How do we get that to $1 million? How do we get that $1 million to $1.5 million? There's a disconnect there because they get to a sort of a plateau, and then how do they get through that? In your experience, from either your own personal experience or from people that you know that have grown books from that size to the bigger size, what are some of the things that you think they're doing differently to get that next level or that next step up? Because I think that's a interesting question to ask.
I was at that point, in my career, where for a period of time, my book of business appeared to have plateaued between $400,000 and $500,000.
Okay.
And one of my mentors came to me and said 2 things that I remember in my career that still stick in my mind. If you want to be a partner, act like a partner. And if you want to build your book of business, start delegating the work. Because with a book of business of about $500,000, if your billing rate is $300 an hour, in order to bring in $500,000 of revenue, you probably have to bill somewhere around 2,000 hours in a year. Mm-hmm. And if you're spending 2,000 hours in any given year billing on a timesheet, you're probably working 2,400 hours a year. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to generate business if you're sitting in an office working 2,400 hours a year. And so it's important to be able to learn how to delegate work. My problem was I didn't know how to delegate. I was of the mindset, if you want it done right, just do it yourself. And I can't afford, with my $400,000 or $500,000 book of business, to do poor quality work or not do the work in the way that I think my client would be satisfied. And so it was very difficult for me to give work to another lawyer to do for me because I was afraid that lawyer wouldn't do the work the way that I wanted it done.
Right.
And I was afraid that if I wasn't interacting with the client on a daily basis, doing the work, that client might not refer more work to me. But the exact opposite is actually true. As long as you are working with people who are smarter and better than you, doing the work should get done in a way in which you would have done it. And it may not be 100% this way you would have done it, but it might be 80, 90, or 95% of the way that you would have done it. But by delegating the work, it does 2 things. One, it frees up your time to be able to go sell your services and network with other individuals. 2, it enables you to show your client that you're not the worker bee. You're the partner, or you're the higher up, and people are working for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the perception of you being the one who directs traffic as opposed to you being the one who does the day-to-day is one that makes clients think that you're sought after because you have so much work that other people have to do the work for you.
Mm-hmm. You must be doing something right. You must be very smart because you have people working for you doing this for you so that you can go out and do
right.
it. Okay. I mean, I think that's all from, from the beginning of getting out there and being on a panel and doing things that are going to get you noticed as an expert, okay, and the perception that you talk about, to being in front of a client and asking questions to understand, where the other opportunities are, to make sure that you're asking for things and not just expecting them to happen or hoping that they happen, all the way through to, building that book to the next level and acting like a partner and delegating. I mean, I think that's all things that lawyers are they're looking for that information and that advice. And so I want to thank you for your time and for being so candid with me in this interview. I'm looking forward to continue to hear great things about you and your firm.
Thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it.